Rookie Fever, the show that looks closely at NFL rookie values all year long.
Let's go! Let's get this show going, man.
Hurry up, hurry up!
With your hosts, Swagzilla Zero G,
We can't all be winners.
Mike, the Feverish Fanero,
It's never in a vacuum! Nothing is in a vacuum!
and FF_Spaceman.
And he's trying to trick me by supporting vacated targets as if they're a real thing.
David Wright, the Rookie Fever podcast.
We just having fun and we working, baby. That's it, baby. They come.
Welcome to the Rookie Fever podcast. I am Mike Fanero, and you're listening to another 2021 Rookie Player Profile. But not just any Rookie Player Profile, because we don't just have any kind of guest. We begged, borrowed, and maybe lied a bit to get him. I'm here one-on-one with the Rich Doxson, founder and host of the Dynasty Nerds podcast. Rich, how the hell are you?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic because just because who we're talking about, it didn't. You had to beg that hard to get me on the show when you told me who you wanted to talk about. I'm like, let's go.
Rookie Fevers. Rookie Player Profile Edition.
You got to pick any rookie from the list available, which were quite a decent amount of rooks. You selected who and why?
Yeah, there's a lot of studs in this draft, but there's only one. Well, no, because there's Trevor Lawrence too, who's like a cream of the crop. But there's only one guy here who there's no debate about besides Trevor Lawrence, who's the number one at their position, and it's Kyle Pitts, tight end out of Florida. You could sit here and argue if you like Javonte Williams, you like Travis Etienne, you like Najee Harris. Do you want Jalen Waddle or do you want Jamar Chase or Devontae Smith or maybe Rondale Moore? That's fine, but nobody is taking Pat Freiermuth over Kyle Pitts. Nobody. He's the clear-cut 1-1 tight end. And I'm going to say this as well. He's the best tight end I've ever scouted on film in my entire life.
Oh, wow. That is saying a lot. Daniel Jeremiah agrees with you. He actually said the most likely player in this class to go to the Hall of Fame is Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts himself tweeted out on March 5th, "I will be the best when it is all said and done."
Yeah. I'm glad they follow me and they're following my takes too. Appreciate the support, fellas.
How big is that teardrop to the two tight ends you mentioned, like Brevin Jordan?
So Brevin Jordan's good, right? Pat Freiermuth, they're good. They're really good tight ends. They're high-end tight ends. And I'd like to get both of my teams, but they're not Kyle Pitts, right? Kyle Pitts is in a tier of his own. I mean, he's the only tight end in the history of college football to be nominated for the Biletnikoff, right?
Wow.
That's insane by itself. I mean, we're talking about Calvin Johnson playing tight end is what we're talking about here. So, Calvin Johnson was a freak. Kyle Pitts is just a freak. I mean, he's a mismatch no matter where you put him. You put him in the slot, you're going to play him versus linebackers, mismatch. You're going to put him versus the cornerbacks, absolute mismatch. He is a mismatch, born to play tight end for your dynasty fantasy football team. He's an absolute stud. So for me, where's the tier drop off? It's as big as a drop off from Trevor Lawrence to the next quarterback, right? It's the biggest drop off from Saquon Barkley to the next running back when they were coming out, right? Like sometimes it's just clear cut, right? If you're in a super flex league 2 years ago, you knew Trevor Lawrence was going to be the 1-1. You knew then. We've known for a while now Kyle Pitts is going to be the 1-1 at tight end. And if tight end was the number one position to be drafted, we'd be talking about him just as much as we're talking about Trevor Lawrence.
How early in the NFL draft do you think he might go? And then the second question to that, how early are you willing to take him in a non-superflex rookie draft?
In a non-superflex rookie draft, if I needed a tight end, I am willing to take him as high as probably right around 4.
Okay.
Which is right around probably the same spot I would take him in a superflex draft too, I guess.
Okay.
It's right around the same spot, right around 4, because I mean, he's still a tight end right now. Yep. So that says a little something, because in a superflex league, I'm a firm believer. Like I was in a clubhouse chat today. They're talking dynasty and they're like, well, a superflex league, I'd still take this wide receiver at 2. And I'm like, over the quarterback, I would just never do that. Like there's just value and there's not value. And the quarterback's the most valuable in a superflex. Now in a non-superflex, and there's no tight end premium. He's still a tight end. So if he's going to give you wide receiver one numbers, like I'm still going to take the wide receiver one, and that's in like, Jamar Chase. The running back value, history proves us. It's proven to us if you draft Najee Harris and he's a running back one, you can get Kyle Pitts most likely plus, right? It doesn't matter. He's a tight end nonetheless. So when you draft and you play football, it's just, where's that value? Okay. And just making the right decision. It doesn't matter how good I think a player is. I mean, Travis Kelce is the best tight end in the history of fantasy football. He's still not going 1-1, 1-2, 1-3, even 3 years ago, So, and he was a wide receiver one pretty much last year. So it's just, where's the value at the position? And I love Kyle Pitts. That's why I'm willing to take him at number 4, number 5. And I got a lot of reasons why, and maybe we'll get into that during the show.
Yeah. And this is a question that a lot of people don't love. So I've been rephrasing it profile after profile. There's no NFL tape on Pitts. I would like you to take a stab at ranking him with Hockenson and Fant. Where does he fit in with Hockenson and Fant?
Yeah, I mean, I am a huge TJ Hockenson truther. He's my tight end number 2 overall in Dynasty, right? Okay. I just traded him and a pick I gave Mark Andrews and like a late pick for TJ Hockenson just the other day in an industry league. But he's tier 1. That's tough because Hockenson's going to be, he's my guy, right? And he's going to be the number 1 receiver there for Detroit with Jared Goff. Jared Goff's got a high completion percentage when he throws to the tight end. And I still want to see where he lands. Like, I would love, what if Kyle Pitts lands with the Chargers, right? Yeah, and him and Justin Herbert. What if he lands in Carolina and Carolina gets, Deshaun Watts? It depends, but I'm probably going to move Kyle Pitts into my top 5 immediately in Dynasty. So to be fair to TJ Hockenson and what I've seen on NFL tape, no matter how much of a truther I am, I would put Kyle Pitts behind TJ Hockenson, but ahead of Noah Fant, and clearly ahead of Noah Fant as well. I mean, Noah Fant's had some drop issues somewhat. He's in a much more crowded system than TJ Hockenson as well. I mean, he's fighting with receptions with Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, KJ Hamler. They still have Albert O there as well, another tight end that has some talent there, Melvin Gordon. So there's a lot of mouths to feed. Where TJ Hockenson, there's not a lot of mouths to feed. Mark Andrews, a tight end 1, mostly because he's the number 1 target in that offense. Darren Waller's a high-end tight end because he's the number 1 option in that offense. Sure is. Yeah. So there's a lot of reasons to go into situations like that. I always make the argument, like, is Alvin Kamara the best running back in the NFL? No, but he's in the best scheme and the best system for fantasy football to exploit his talents. So, it's not just about who's the best player, who's in the best situation and has talent. There's a lot that goes into it when we're looking to win Dynasty or just fantasy football leagues in general. And Kyle Pitts, to me, head of Fant, behind Hockenson, but right behind Hockenson, right? Like right behind there. I could easily see him have Kittle 1, Hockenson 2. Then we got, Mark Andrews right there, Travis Kelce, Darren Waller. But I would take Pitts ahead of Travis Kelce in a Dynasty startup because of youth. I would take him ahead of Darren Waller because he's pretty much Darren Waller. So I'm going to take the youth. So it's like, do I like Mark Andrews or I like Kyle Pitts? And on an athletic profile, I'll take Pitts. So in a Dynasty startup, I could see me before Kyle Pitts ever takes a snap in the NFL. He's my tight end number 3 overall in Dynasty. And you can argue that's too low.
Yeah, and that's incredible. And if you can get him early as for, I've been doing a ton of rookie mocks lately, and you can see getting him in the mid round of the first, and the value there, like you said, the position, there's a drop off, right? There's a tier drop. There's not a tight end like this that comes out often. I've heard several other analysts say Pitts would be their wide receiver 2 in this class. If he weren't a tight end, but he is, where are you purely on him as a pass catcher? His ability to separate. 2. Yeah.
Yeah. Right behind Jamar Chase.
Just right there, right? He's that good.
He's that good. Like I said, I mean, I didn't even like I'm not even comparing him to like a guy like Darren Waller, which is a good comp. I mean, when we're talking about like an athletic profile coming out of the tight end position, I mean, we're talking Jeremy Shockey, Kellen Winslow. Those are probably the only guys close, right? Those are the only guys close on an athletic profile. But this guy's 6'6", 246, and he just dominates, right? He's never dropped a pass in the red zone. Never, according to PFF. He's never dropped a pass in the red zone. So his speed, his hands, his jumping ability, I mean, touchdowns are cream of the crop. I mean, ask LeGarrette Blunt owners a couple of years ago in New England what like touchdowns can do for you. I mean, it's a difference between being a tier 1 player and a tier 2 player. And Pitt's on the right system. Again, match him up with Justin Herbert, and Mike Williams and Keenan Allen on the outside. Yeah. That's a dangerous weapon for a guy with a big arm like Justin Herbert. That's my dream spot. That's what I'm going to be preaching on the Dynasty Nerds podcast. But I put him at tight end too, or wide receiver too. He's just that good.
12 touchdowns in just 8 games last year.
Yeah, he missed 3 games. So he got a concussion. Guy scored a touchdown for 6 consecutive quarters.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, he had a great season. 770 yards on top of that. Great conference. There's not a whole lot to not like. So I'm going to make you try to pick something.
Yeah.
If there's some concern on Pitts. What is it?
There's a lot of leagues where I don't have first round picks this year. It's a great draft class, but there's a lot of leagues where I'm a contender in, and I'm a firm believer. I have no shame in trading away my draft picks for proven players to go win a ship. Because that's my number one goal, is to win titles.
Yep.
But I can see right this summer, after all my drafts happen, in every league I'm in, forming packages to get Kyle Pitts. Like he's at the top of my trade buy list of all these players in this draft, right? Because like you said before, there's a reason I picked the tight end. I'm a firm believer in dynasty and in fantasy football as whole, having that tight end, right? To have one of those top 5 guys, because I think it gives you such an edge over your opponent. I mean, if you go back and look at best ball leagues last year, a majority of those teams that won had Travis Kelce on their roster because he's a difference maker, right? Like a lot of people have good running backs. There's 12 running back ones. There's 12 wide receiver ones. There's 12 quarterback ones. And yeah, there's 12 tight end ones, but that's not the case because we all know tight end ones, a tight end 2 mid-range is the same as tight end number 7. So if you can get one of those top 4, and even more so, a guy that could be the elite guy, that's a top 2 guy, those are difference makers. That's an edge, right? Why do you listen to this podcast? You're looking for an edge over your league mates. Information is an edge. There's not a lot of players that give you an edge. There's some running back guys like Alvin Kamara last year. Travis Kelce is a difference maker. So if Kyle Pitts could come in and be that difference maker for his NFL team, and more importantly, a dynasty team, you immediately got a leg up and an edge on everybody in your league. Not some of them, everybody in your league. Because if you own Travis Kelce, you have an edge on every single other team in your dynasty league because you have the best of the best, and the best by of the best by a very large margin.
I'm assuming that's your ceiling for Mr. Kyle Pitts, is a Travis Kelce or a Waller.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the ceiling. That's not even the ceiling. That's what I expect. Right. It's just what I expect. He's just a hard player for me to see not succeed. I mean, and most of those guys that come in that are top 10 picks at tight end succeed. You know what I mean? I mean, Kellen Winslow didn't have a high margin of success, but he also got in that motorcycle accident and destroyed his knee up. You know what I mean? But a lot of those guys that are picked that high have success. And to me, I think he could be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft, or if not close to it. If I had to guess today, he's going to be a top 10 pick. But that's my ceiling. Yeah, because I think so because once he steps on the field, he's literally legit one of your best weapons on offense, especially when it comes to the red zone. Like he dominates the red zone so much. So you'd imagine every script that you have when your team gets in the red zone, that he's a part of that somehow.
Rich, I know you watch a lot of tape. Do we need to worry about how he is as a blocker, or is he just such a great pass catcher we don't care?
No, I prefer my tight ends not to be good blockers because then they're not going to be asked to block. I don't care what my players do for their NFL team, right? I care what they do for my fantasy football team. So I love the fact that he's not the best blocker, and his biggest knock is that he's not the best blocker. Good. Don't ask him to block, right? Don't ever ask him to block. Because, OJ Howard for the Bucks, right? His biggest Achilles heel was because he was a solid route runner in good hands, but he was also a very good blocker. So they're going to ask you to block a lot. So if that team has some offensive line struggles, guess what you're doing? You're going to help. You're going to be chipping. You're going to be blocking. It's going to slow you down, even though they ask you to run routes, and it gives you less opportunities to catch a football. And last I checked, I play in all PPR leagues. Every catch you catch is giving me a point. So please be the worst blocker known to man and get out there and catch footballs. Line up in the slot. Don't even line up a tight end. Go line up in the slot, but be listed at tight end for me in my fantasy leagues.
So it's very, very clear you have rookie fever for Mr. Kyle Pitts. Could you imagine a floor though? Is there a world where he's not Travis Kelce? What's his floor?
I mean, I guess the tape doesn't show it, but I guess you're looking at a top 10 pick that wasn't that good, right? Like an Eric Ebron,
Yep.
where all the athleticism
Yep.
there, the size is there, but your hands are just terrible. But I mean, so I guess that's his floor because all of a sudden he forgets how to catch, I suppose. But he's shown none of that whatsoever on tape. I mean, his hands are absolutely terrific. Right? He's not even a body catcher, like he's a hands catcher. So
Yeah.
he's a giant. He looks like a giant wide receiver. That's why the hype is there. So there's not many players I go in and say this guy's a for sure thing, right? Like, but I feel like Kyle Pitts is a for sure thing. No matter where it goes, he's got the college tape. He's gonna have the draft pedigree, and that's all you can ask for. Like Eric Ebron was a very nice tight end, but his hands weren't there.
So you definitely hinted around to your favorite landing spot. Tell me what that is again, because I wanna ask you a follow-up on that.
So I have two spots that I'd really enjoy. I like the Carolina Panthers with a quarterback because I love to see Joe Brady and Matt Rule utilize his skill set or the field, and definitely have a guy like Christian McCaffrey and DJ Moore to offset. But I think ideally because I feel like they're being a market for a quarterback. So I feel like they would, unless they trade for Deshaun Watson, maybe they traded for Deshaun Watson, they lose that pick anyway. So they can't draft Kyle Pitts. So it's like that can't even happen. You know what I mean? So I think the most realistic landing spot that I could really appreciate would be the LA Chargers, because
I love that one.
You got Justin Herbert, who's another dynasty darling, coming off one of the best rookie seasons we've ever seen for a quarterback. Just broke their touchdown record. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams is on his 5th-year option. He probably won't be back. Keenan Allen's a little bit older, so we're looking for potentially an offense that could, by the time he's in his not even breakout year, but the prime year for a tight end, which is a 3rd year, he could literally be the number 1 option in that offense in the passing game. And you pair up Kyle Pitts, and you're going to tell me he's going to play with Justin Herbert for the next 10 years, who has an arm that can get the ball anywhere on the field. And then Kyle Pitts has the speed and a route run ability and the hands to go up and catch balls from Justin Herbert. To me, that's the most ideal situation. That's the situation to make me go from 6 to midnight. I'm a firm believer in taking a quarterback no matter what. But like if you're in a tight end premium league and you're sitting there at 3 and you can't trade back and you have 3 quarterbacks and you really could just use that tight end to get there, I'm okay with it, right? And sometimes if it's real close, like sometimes it's okay to make that move because, again, you might be able to draft a quarterback next year. You won't be able to draft a Kyle Pitts next year. So land him up with the Chargers for me. But again, this is a player I'm heavily targeted this year.
You're definitely getting me fired up about him. All right.
Wait till you hear my podcast.
realistic expectations year 1. Like give me ballpark. What's he giving me year 1?
I mean, that's hard because of all the positions that don't give you any production year 1, it's a tight end. It's a tight end position.
Yeah.
Now, there's always outliers too, because even any position besides running back doesn't give you a lot of production. You get the Justin Jeffersons, you get the Anquan Boldens, you get those guys that come in and contribute. So, I mean, but it wouldn't surprise me because it's such an easy position to get on top. I think he's so dominant in the red zone. I think his touchdown production alone, right? Let's say realistically he gets about 680 to 730 yards, which is pretty good for a tight end.
Oh, absolutely.
Or say it's even lower. Say he gets 500 yards, but he gets 10 touchdowns his rookie year, right? And all of a sudden, what I'm talking about now, the rest of the world is talking about, which is what I expect. And that's realistic to me. Those 10 touchdowns alone is going to put him up to like tight end number 6 alone. So I look for him to come in and be a tight end 1 early. I think his floor is top 12 early. I literally think his ceiling could be tight end number 3, tight end number 2 his rookie year.
Wow.
If he dominates the red zone like he did in college, right? Like if he gets
gonna have to happen,
he gets 10 to 13 touchdowns, he's a top 5 tight end easily, even on 500 yards. So I think those are realistic expectations. I think you're going to draft a guy at tight end, and we're going to see something we normally don't see, and that's tight end 1 production out the gate.
I'm going to get you out of here on 2 questions. These 2 questions will not be about Kyle Pitts. Who is your guy, not Kyle Pitts, in this year's draft that you are hanging your hat on?
I'll just go off of what I've scouted so far.
Fair enough.
And I'm a real big fan of what I saw of Zach Wilson. He's a kid that I went to with an unbiased opinion. I didn't really know much about him. It just, I knew that Chris Sims had talked him up as his quarterback one.
Mhm.
He's taken a big rise this season as well. And I was like, okay, well, let me see what's going on with this kid. He looks like my son. My son's 11. So when I went to watch his tape, it was somebody that I was like, oh my God, this kid's the truth, right? Reminds me a lot of Baker Mayfield coming out. I'll hang my hat on him as the truth. And that's the hardest position to hang your hat on anything, because NFL GMs get paid millions of dollars to hang their hats on these players, and you're 50-50 at best. You know what I mean? But from what I've seen, like, I would say, like, I don't see him not succeeding at the next level. I really don't. Like, he's just that good. He's my 1-2 in Superflex. And even as much I love as Kyle Pitts, like, there's no way I would take Kyle Pitts over Zach Wilson today.
Got it. It's one of the things I love about how you do approach this. You literally segment off. I'm dealing with the regular season and the regular season. After that, I'm going to start digging in, but that's a process. It takes a while to look at these guys thoroughly. My question to you is, how do you keep the noise out? Like, you're hearing people's rankings all while you're watching this tape. You are able somehow to push that all aside and come up with your own analysis. How do you do that? I'm curious.
Because I let the tape speak for itself.
Nice.
I mean, I hear other people talk, and it's good to, like, keep those guys at my forefront of my mind, like, know who to look at maybe a little bit more, but I give everybody their fair process. I think that it's the best way to do it. It's not like, that's the thing. You're gonna get this narrative of hear people talking, and you're just going to think the same thing because you heard it so often.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Again, in Dynasty Nerds, we've been right 95% of the time. I think we were wrong on DK Metcalf, but even at DK Metcalf, who we didn't love, by the end of the process, I know Matt had him as 112. You know what I mean? Like, so we weren't completely out on him, but for the most part, the guys that we're out on, we're right about. So I think the best process to do for any, like, that's how I do it. And I do it in depth, right? I own a Dynasty site. I put my voice out there to be, opinionated on, and I expect myself, I hold myself at a high standard. And because if I give out bad information, people are going to stop listening to my podcast. People are going to stop subscribing to my website. So I have a duty to do my best to put the best information out there. And for me to do that, again, it's just, I don't pay any attention to a lot of noise. I listen to those names and I hear them, because sometimes I'll go back and look at those players and say, okay, what am I missing? You know what I mean? Like, everybody's telling me this guy is the man. So all that does for me is maybe a couple of those guys I see at the top, I'll just go back and watch them again, or pay a little bit more attention. And, what I'll do is I'll watch the tape. I'll come with my own analysis. I'll read some scouting reports on some guys that I trust as well, that I think are good analysts. Because sometimes maybe I'll do my analysis and I'll read a scouting report and I'm like, oh, I didn't even see that. Let me go back and check it. You know what I mean? Oh yeah, he was right. And then I'll go back and watch all the same games, looking for that one trait over and over and over again. Or sometimes it'll be the same thing. Like, I think something's really good, and somebody will be like, hey, he does this bad. And then I'll go back and watch it again. I'm like, no, I believe in what I'm saying.
Right.
And we made the same argument with our partner Garrett Price last year. Me and Matt, Garrett was talking down on Justin Jefferson a little bit about, like, he's a slot receiver, his contested catch ability. And if you listen to Dynasty Nerds podcast, for multiple weeks, me and Matt were on the podcast screaming, what are you talking about? He is dominant at the contested catch, and Matt was, and kudos to my partner, Matt, who over the last couple of years has nailed the high end wide receivers, where everybody else was, again, their narrative was, because it was for years, Jerry Jeudy, right? Well, my partner was like, no, after watching the tape, because he has the same process as I do, right? He does the exact same thing as I do. We have the same process. He came back and was like, under the pressure and going into it, Jerry Jeudy and CeeDee Lamb were 1-1 and 1-2. When he was done, he was like, guys, listen, I'm a little, now after watching the tape, I'm a little down on Jerry Jeudy, but I'm really high on Justin Jefferson. He's the clear 1-2 behind CeeDee Lamb to me, and at the time, and social media and people, because the narrative says Jerry Jeudy, right? The narrative, or Jalen Reagor, it was Jerry Jeudy or Jalen Reagor. Everybody says that. Matt's over here saying, no, it's Justin Jefferson. And people are like, oh yeah. Well, so people are so quick to judge, and they don't want to let the process play out. Matt was right. So if you listen to our show consistently, Matt's right a lot. So you took his word for it. Yep. The previous year, he said the same thing about AJ Brown. Everybody was talking, everybody liked AJ Brown, but Matt really liked AJ Brown and had the high end. So sometimes it's just finding the guys that you trust and you like and going with them. And everybody's gonna be wrong, right? Not everybody's right all the time. Yep. But if you're right more than you're wrong, you're going to build some very successful dynasty fantasy football teams. So I think personally, that's the best way to go about it, because if you don't, a lot of times you do listen to everybody else. You listen to all these other informations. You're already going in with a biased narrative, right? Because you're just gonna assume what you see is what you read and what you hear, no matter what. You're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. You know what I mean? It's like listening to this one song over and over again, and you think you know the lyrics, but you're singing the wrong lyrics the entire time.
Right.
And it's not until somebody like you read the lyrics on yourself and do your own diligence to go read the lyric, unless somebody tells you that you know what you were doing was wrong. You just automatically assume. So I love that process for me personally. One, it's just a time about into it, but it's the tape doesn't lie. That's why I tell everybody, like, these analytics, like, the tape doesn't lie. Like the tape never lies what you see. I mean, you don't know when a guy's head and when a guy's heart. So you'll never know that. But like, I feel like if you go off the tape, you'll be right more than you're wrong. So building the film room on dynastynerds.com and give everybody the availability to go watch the same film we do.
Yeah, that's great.
Was really important to us. And I tell people all the time on the podcast, like, hey, it's fine. Everybody's telling you this and this and this, and that's fine that you don't have enough time to go put into it, but maybe just take the time. It takes 5 minutes to watch one game on a player in the Dynasty Nerds film. Just when you're in the bathroom, right? When you're in the bathroom, you're taking a little break because you had too much Taco Bell, watch a clip of a guy and see what you like. Cause sometimes when you see it, you just see it, right? Like, I'm not a scout. I'm not going to give you the intricacies of every little thing. But one thing I know is a good football player and a guy who I don't think is a good football player. And all I do is, after I watch that tape, give my best analysis of why I think that player is a good player. That's a very long-winded answer to what your question.
I was going to say, some people are in the bathroom longer than others.
Oh yeah. My wife tells me that all the time.
But the one thing I kind of also heard in there, in between the lines even, was great takes aren't the first ones out. It takes the work. It takes you grinding through the film and really looking and developing your own opinion.
And and that's the thing. So many people are out to get, like, they want to be the first one to get out their 2021 rookie ranks and their analysis. So like, they want to be the first. Like, who cares? Like, nobody's drafting their rookies in February. Nobody's drafting their rookies in March. I'm like, who cares? Like, who cares? Like, like Garrett has his rookie ranks up on dynastynerds.com right now. I don't have my rookie ranks up yet because I'm not ready to put them up yet. And I don't even feel bad about it because there's no need for those. You know when you need your rookie ranks and you need to know? When you do your rookie draft. That's when you need to know. Sometimes that could really benefit you because a lot of times the NFL draft comes and your board switches. And for the most part, that's for the worst, right? Because what running back took a huge hit last year because of the NFL draft? DeAndre Swift.
Absolutely. Yep.
Only because the NFL draft. Going into the draft process for that entire year before the draft, even Jonathan Taylor took a big surge there, but it was always DeAndre Swift, right? It was always DeAndre Swift is 1-1.
Yep.
J.K. Dobbins was up there, and then Jonathan Taylor, up there as well.
But he went to Detroit.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden,
running back survives in Detroit.
Yeah. He takes this huge hit. Look at DeAndre Swift now. He's a first round startup pick for most drafts, literally 12 months later. Yep. And it's because we let the NFL draft dictate and change our boards up. And sometimes that's why I like to have the pre-tape rankings as well. And I preach it every year. I'm like, hey, I can't let the draft alter my rankings too much, even though it always does because I'm human. But you know what I mean? That's a good, you mentioned process. That's another process to have. Like, okay, where do these guys have right before the NFL draft ranked? Because then when the NFL draft happens and those players drop drastically, then you're like, okay, hey, I'm in the second round. Well, God, this player's on the board. He's been going like late every draft, but God, the Nerds had him pre-drafted like 112, 113. There's value there to be had. Yeah, that's a good process to go. If that makes sense to you and the listeners, is
absolutely.
Like, it's all a process, right? It's all a process to put ourselves in the best position to make the right pick. Because it's one of the most important things we do in Dynasty. This is it. Who do we pick? You're talking rookies for a reason because people want to know about this player and how it shakes out. And I think this is important because it's something that could really set back your team drastically if you miss. And if you don't have a process, and listen, a lot of people can't watch a tape or they don't have time to do all that. And they rely on your podcasts, my website, my podcast to make these decisions for us.
Yes.
And I think getting information out just as simple as this helps. Like, okay, hey, just look at some people you trust. Maybe it's me, rankings before the draft, and then check it right after as well.
I agree.
And cross-reference that to help you make your decision.
Absolutely. Rich, our listeners got a ton of bonus information about your process and the process in general of playing fantasy football and winning championships, because that's what it's all about. Thank you so much for joining me this week. Please tell everyone where they can find you, your content, anything you want to promote.
Well, if you ever want to talk Dynasty, I'm on Twitter at DynastyRich. Of course, you can check out my website, dynastynerds.com. We have some really great services on there and tools. I legitimately say this, not just my tool, which is you say it. We have the best Dynasty tool on the market with the Dynasty GM.
Yes.
It's a fantastic tool that helps you just manage your team. Again, if you're just not an average player, but a new player, and you're looking for help to help make sure you're making the best decisions, that's what the Dynasty GM is for. And like I mentioned, we make sure we just have the right tools to put you in the best position, whether it be watching film, drafting rookies, rankings, articles. We make sure we try to provide every single thing to help you along this Dynasty process. So dynastynerds.com, we do a podcast that comes out every single Wednesday. If you never listened and you're into rookies, we break down every rookie throughout this process. We just started last week with the quarterbacks. We're going to do tight ends this week. And of course, we're wrong sometimes, but I feel like we're definitely right more than we're wrong. So check us out.
That's why we invited you on the show, Rich. And I thank you again so much. And I thank our listeners. From everyone at Rookie Fever, Swags at Swagzilla 0G, Dave the Spaceman Wright, and of course myself, thank you. We appreciate you. This is the Rookie Fever podcast. Please do not forget to rate and review, and please, please do not forget to be awesome. Thank you, Rich.
Yeah, 45 minutes. You're right.